Welcome to Top 10 Comics, where we count down defining moments in comics that made this medium of art expression legendary. This is where the list begins. Today, let's count down the best horror comic book artists of all time. Fair warning, and yes, we know we've said this before, this list is definitely going to spark debate. Horror is subjective, but this countdown wasn't made on vibes alone. We carefully considered decades of fan polls, critical acclaim, influence, longevity, and how deeply each artist shaped the language of horror comics. And when we're done, tell us who you think we got right and who we didn't. Now, without further ado, let's begin. Top 10 Best Horror Comic Artists. Number 10. Kelly Jones. Kelly Jones takes the number 10 spot for his unmistakable impact on gothic horror in comics. His work on titles like Dracula, The Sandman, Deadman, and Batman Red Rain leaned heavily into distortion, shadow, and exaggerated anatomy, creating imagery that felt more like a waking nightmare than traditional comic art. His characters were never meant to look human. They were meant to look cursed. Drawing inspiration from classic Universal monster films and German expressionist cinema, Jones favoured sharp silhouettes, elongated forms, and overwhelming darkness at a time when cleaner, more realistic styles dominated the industry. That choice made his work instantly recognisable and deeply unsettling. We chose Kelly Jones because he helped bring pure gothic horror aesthetics back into modern comics. He proved that fear doesn't come from realism or gore alone, but from atmosphere, exaggeration, and the courage to embrace the grotesque. Number 9. Mike Ploog. Mike Ploog takes our number 9 spot for bringing raw, atmospheric horror back into comics during a time when the genre was being reborn. Best known for his work on Werewolf by Night, Man-Thing, Frankenstein, and The Monster of Frankenstein, Ploog gave monsters a sense of weight, tragedy, and humanity that set his work apart. His art favoured mood over polish, loose lines, heavy shadows, and expressive faces that made the horror feel emotional rather than just monstrous. There's a strong cinematic quality to his storytelling, with panels that breathe and linger, allowing dread to build naturally. We chose Mike Ploog because he helped define 1970s horror comics, blending classic monster imagery with modern sensibilities. His work reminded readers that monsters could be terrifying and sympathetic at the same time, a balance that horror comics still strive for today. Number 8. Charles Burns. Charles Burns earns the number 8 spot for transforming body horror into psychological storytelling. Best known for Black Hole, Burns uses clean, almost sterile line work to present deeply unsettling ideas: mutation, disease, identity, and alienation. The contrast between his precise visuals and the grotesque transformations on the page makes the horror feel intimate and inescapable. Set against the backdrop of adolescence, Black Hole turns physical mutation into metaphor, tapping into fear, shame, and loss of control. Burns' imagery lingers not because it's loud, but because it's quiet, clinical, and disturbingly relatable. His work has been widely praised far beyond comic circles, frequently appearing on lists of the greatest graphic novels ever made. We chose Charles Burns because he expanded the definition of horror comics. He proved that horror doesn't need monsters or jump scares. It can live in the body, the mind, and the slow realization that something is deeply wrong. Number 7. Guy Davis. Guy Davis takes the number 7 spot for mastering quiet, creeping horror through atmosphere and restraint. Best known for his work on BPRD, The Marquis, and Sandman Mystery Theatre, Davis specializes in making the ordinary feel deeply unsettling. His art doesn't rush the scare. It lets dread seep in slowly, panel by panel. Davis's figures often look tired, haunted, and worn down by the world around them, grounding the supernatural in something painfully human. His environments feel lived in and decaying, reinforcing the sense that horror isn't an intrusion. It's already there, waiting to be noticed. There's a literary quality to his storytelling, where mood and character matter more than spectacle. We chose Guy Davis because he represents mature, atmospheric horror at its best. His work proves that fear doesn't always scream. Sometimes it whispers, lingers, and refuses to let go. Number 6. Tom Sutton. Tom Sutton takes the number 6 spot as one of the most underrated pillars of classic horror comics. Best known for his work on Creepy, Eerie, House of Mystery, and Swamp Thing, Sutton excelled at blending traditional gothic horror with a loose, expressive style that gave his stories a dreamlike, unsettling quality. His art often felt slightly off-kilter. Faces stretched just a bit too far, shadows swallowing figures whole, which made the horror feel psychological rather than purely visual. Sutton understood pacing, silence, and atmosphere, letting dread build naturally instead of relying on shock. His work fit perfectly in horror anthologies, where mood and tension mattered more than spectacle. We chose Tom Sutton because he represents the soul of Bronze Age horror comics. He helped keep the genre alive and evolving, proving that fear could be eerie, poetic, and quietly disturbing, all at once. Number 5. Graham Ingels. Graham Ingels takes the number 5 spot as the visual foundation of horror comics. Known to fans as the Ghastly One, Ingels was the defining artist of EC Comics' horror line, including Tales from the Crypt, The Vault of Horror, and The Haunt of Fear. His decaying corpses, twisted faces, and oppressive shadows didn't just scare readers. They established what horror comics were supposed to look like. Including Graham Ingels on a list like this is indisputable. His art leaned heavily into rot, age, and moral decay, making every panel feel damp, brittle, and already half dead. Long before horror became psychological or cosmic, Ingels made it visceral, grotesque, and unforgettable. We chose Graham Ingels because without him, the visual language of horror comics simply wouldn't be as strong as it is today. What he established in those pages never truly went away. Number 4. Mike Mignola. Mike Mignola takes the number 4 spot for redefining horror through restraint and atmosphere. Best known as the creator of Hellboy, Mignola stripped comics down to their essentials: heavy blacks, stark compositions, and silence, letting shadows do as much storytelling as dialogue. His pages feel cold, ancient, and deliberate, evoking folklore, gothic horror, and cosmic dread all at once. Rather than overwhelming the reader with detail, Mignola trusted negative space and timing. A single figure in a sea of black could feel more terrifying than any monster fully revealed. Drawing heavily from Eastern European folklore, Lovecraftian myth, and classic pulp horror, his work gave modern horror comics a mythic, timeless quality. We chose Mike Mignola because he proved that horror doesn't need excess to be powerful. His visual language, built on shadow, silence, and suggestion, changed how horror is drawn and showed that sometimes what you don't see is the most frightening thing of all. Number 3. Richard Corben. Richard Corben takes the number 3 spot for mastering grotesque beauty in horror comics. Best known for his work in Creepy, Eerie, Den, and later collaborations like Hellboy, Corben's art fused exaggerated anatomy, lush colour, and visceral texture to create horror that felt physical, almost sculptural. His characters bulge, rot, and strain against the page, making the body itself a source of dread. Corben's style stood apart because it was unapologetically sensual and unsettling at the same time. He embraced excess, thick musculature, distorted faces, and painterly depth, turning monsters and humans alike into something disturbingly alive. His influence stretched across genres, but his horror work remains some of the most instantly recognizable ever produced. We chose Richard Corben because he proved horror comics could be both beautiful and horrifying without compromise. His work didn't just depict fear, it embodied it, leaving an impact that still resonates with artists and readers decades later. Number 2. Junji Ito. Junji Ito takes the number 2 spot as one of the most universally feared horror artists of all time. Best known for works like Uzumaki, Tomie, and Gaio, Ito specializes in slow-burn psychological terror that escalates into pure nightmare. His clean, controlled line work makes the horror hit harder. The more ordinary the world looks, the more disturbing it becomes when it starts to unravel. Ito's genius lies in obsession and inevitability. Spirals, flesh, insects, and transformation repeat until fear becomes inescapable. He doesn't rely on quick shocks. He builds dread patiently, trapping the reader in a cycle they can't look away from. That approach has made his work resonate far beyond manga, earning admiration from horror fans, filmmakers, and critics worldwide. We chose Junji Ito because his influence is global and undeniable. Few artists have created imagery so instantly recognizable, or so deeply unsettling, that it continues to haunt readers long after the book is closed. Before we reveal our number 1 pick, we want to take a moment to acknowledge a few other films we seriously considered for this list. If you've made it this far, thank you. We really appreciate you watching and supporting the channel. Here are a few standout picks that deserve recognition. Johnny Craig, whose polished, realistic art on Tales from the Crypt gave EC horror its sharp, ironic bite. Gene Colan, a master of shadow and atmosphere, best known for Tomb of Dracula, where his loose, moody style redefined gothic horror in mainstream comics. Jack Davis, whose wildly expressive figures and exaggerated motion made EC horror grotesque, energetic, and unforgettable. Emily Carroll, a modern standout whose work on Through the Woods proved that pacing, silence, and page design alone can generate real fear. And Wally Wood, whose detailed, intense artwork across EC's horror and suspense titles helped define the look of pre-code comic terror. And now for our number 1 pick. Bernie Wrightson. Bernie Wrightson stands alone at the top as the most influential horror comic artist of all time. Wrightson once said, "I love to draw monsters. There's something about them that fascinates me." And that fascination is exactly what elevated his work beyond fear and into something timeless. Best known for co-creating Swamp Thing and for his legendary illustrated edition of Frankenstein, Wrightson brought classical draftsmanship into modern horror comics. His dense pen and ink textures, mastery of light and shadow, and obsessive attention to decay made his monsters feel heavy, tragic, and alive. They weren't just frightening, they carried history, sadness, and weight. We chose Bernie Wrightson as our number 1 because his influence is unquestionable. He didn't just define how horror comics look, he legitimized them as serious art. Even today, the standard for horror illustration is still measured against the work of Bernie Wrightson. So when it comes to the best horror comic artists of all time, our number 1 choice is clear: Bernie Wrightson. And that wraps up our top 10 countdown. If you feel like we missed anything, or if there's a list you'd love to see us tackle next, let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Thanks so much for watching and supporting the channel. Keep the comic book industry alive, keep reading, and we'll see you next time.